So we've talked about why we reference, and I've shown you some examples of when you might be referencing. Third thing we need to now consider is the types of referencing. So generally speaking, we've got two types, in-text or footnote. Each has a pro or con of using it, okay? There's no magical system, and in the research project, it doesn't matter what you do, you just have to be consistent. So if we take a look at this practice piece again, I had been putting in some pretend references using the in-text reference system, just using a very simplified system so that we could reference the in-text information. Now, that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to use footnotes. So in our footnotes, what we do instead, same example, but this time, we're going to use the footnoting process. So to do footnoting is a little bit different. You need to use your Word function where it says references, and then you need to use insert footnote. What's going to happen is wherever your cursor is, where you say insert footnote, it's going to put a number. So if we just do a practice one here, it's put a number 5 where my cursor was. It has also created a space for a reference with the number 5 on it. This is kind of like a GPS, it's a map. So when your reader is looking at your article, you can go, number 5, I wonder where she got the information for that from. So what we need to do is have a look at how this student has done it. As we saw before in the first video, they have their really nice topic sentence, and then they've talked about some reports of the observations. They had an academic resource, and they had used a quotation to prove their point. So that number 1, they've gone references, insert footnote. Down the bottom, we can see now that they have put in their full bibliographic reference. Sorry, let's just move this out of the way. So why is that important? Because this is what you get when you're using your generator from your bibliographic reference. You're cutting and pasting it over. The only difference, and this is something you've got to be really careful with, is if you want to show really high level understanding of referencing, your bibliography is going to be ordered by last names, whereas your footnotes will be ordered by first names. I know it's weird, academics are a pain in the butt. So let's have a look at this student's bibliography. So we can see we have Gravock, Bendrups, Howell, and Bennett, and this was the resource they used, and we can see its last name and then their initial. And this resource had 4 authors in it. So there were 4 last names followed by initials. When we are up in our piece, we are doing the initial and then the last name. So you need to manually change this. And so this is the difference between the sort of B grade and A grade student, because the B grade student copy paste the bibliographic reference in, looks really nice, they've got a fancy footnote, looking swell. The A grade student actually thinks, wait, what are the conventions? What do I have to do this properly? Oh, I have to fix it. I have to make sure my information's in there the way it's meant to be. So that's just a bit of a hot tip for you. What also you need to understand is that these numbers do not relate to the source. They relate to the place in the paper which is being referenced. So number 1 is the number 1 spot for any sources that help prove that point. Number 2 is the place where any sources that help prove that point will now be referenced. And what you'll notice in this one is that this student has her first source. Then she has another source that proves the same point. So she's put both of them in. Then this point was really clearly confirmed. She has a third person referencing all on that same number. That same number 2 is a place for 3 sources to come in. Now that's something you can do in in-text citations as well. I could go Harper 2020, I could go Paris-Sears 2020, and I could go Smith 2020. Separate it with semicolons. I'll talk more in the third video.